Troops of Operation Lafia Dole record more successes as clearance operations continue in Borno State.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss arms proliferation and the 2019 elections.
And tick says the clock ticking towards the 2019 general elections, and politicians, political parties, INEC observers and monitors, the media, as well as the electorate as well, other stakeholders continue to prepare for this all-important exercise.
Yeah, that's right, Claire, but I didn't hear you mention one item that is as important as the others that you have just enumerated, if not indeed the most important. I'm here talking about security, and this is because many say an election such as the one Nigeria is going to have rises and falls on the kind of security arrangement put in place before, during, and after.
Kingsley, you're very, very right. Indeed, security, of course, as well as our viewers, we recall, has been discussed on this program, frequently, especially as it affects election. And of course, today our focus on preparations for the 2019 general elections. That's what we're beginning. But security is a running story, Kingsley.
That's right.
And that's why, of course, we are also returning to it today on today's edition.
Well, our focus, therefore, is on the proliferation of arms and ammunition and the 2019 general elections, which are barely 4 weeks away. Now, there have been reports of seizure of arms and ammunition in various parts of the country by the police, customs, and other security agencies. And these seizures have raised concerns about the issue of violence.
Indeed, quite worrisome is this issue. You also recall that some cases of violence, were reported during campaigns, and some assassinations as well as attempts linked to politics have also been recorded in some parts of the country. Kingsley, we record the incidents in Onisha, where, of course, some trucks, were intercepted.
Now, well, that's right. Now, the concern, it's also heightened when you add to all of these incidents the ongoing security challenges around different parts of the country, whether you're talking about herdsmen attacks, kidnapping and armed robbery, banditry, militancy, the Boko Haram insurgency, and other crimes simply credited to unknown gunmen. Indeed.
Now, the question will be, who are those unknown gunmen behind the importation of arms and ammunition into the country? And what is their mission? I mean, why are cases recorded more just before crucial elections? How much of those illicit arms have passed into the country without being detected?
And how do you, of course, begin to ferret out the illicit weapons wherever they are stashed? Tough questions, Clay. And, of course, what has happened to some of those persons who have been arrested in connection with the possession or importation of the illicit arms and ammunition? And what is the implication of having, as it were, a proliferation of arms on the eve of the 2019 general elections? These are some of the questions we shall be raising on the program today as we engage experts who will, of course, profile their answers. And it's on that note that we'd like to welcome you to today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you, as always, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I join my colleague, Kingsley, to welcome you. I am Claire Adilabo Abdurazak. Always a pleasure to have you join us on the program. And it's the first edition for this week. And as always, we have the complimentary segments that will be brought to you. And they will include newspaper review. Bayo will be joining us later on. And we'll also take you to see trending business stories. There will be sports, and hopefully we'll take on some development stories or developing stories on the foreign scene. But for now, we join Ogwa Vivian Onyedibia, who is ready to give us the morning news. Ogwa, good to see you. Good morning.
It's good to see you too, Claire. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here's the news. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has assured traders in the country of the federal government's continuous support to grow their businesses through a component of the federal government's social investment program, Trader Money. The Vice President stated this shortly after launching the Trader Money initiative in Benin City, Edo State capital.
The difference between success and failure is character. regardless of talent. And that's why I'm saying, no matter how talented you are, if you lack that central thing called character, it's extremely difficult to succeed. You must be trustworthy.
And President Muhammadu Buhari has reassured Nigerians that his second-term bid is to give him the platform to build on the successes achieved in his first term. The president gave the assurance in a message to the testimonies of change in Abuja.
The government says it has paid pensioners from the defunct NITEL and the Nigeria Airways, among others. Is it not better to hear directly from those who have received their pensions after waiting for many years? This is exactly what we have done. We ask Nigerians, volunteers all, who have benefited from the various programs of this administration, to relate their experiences to fellow Nigerians. That is how the testimony series was born.
And the chairman, Central Working Committee of the APC Women and Youth Presidential Campaign, Mohammed Buba Marwa, wants affiliates of the Buhari support groups to work in unity towards a common goal of re-electing President Muhammadu Buhari and all APC candidates. He stated this while unveiling the state coordinators of the presidential campaign team in Abuja.
The wife of the president, Dr. Aisha Buhari. She urges all of us to close ranks, to ensure victory, to keep our eyes on the ball and to mobilize for victory on the 16th of February and other elections.
And still talking politics, the All Progressives Congress says under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, all government institutions, including the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, will be allowed to operate independently in accordance to their rules as enshrined in the nation's constitution. Political correspondent Saliu Abdullahi reports that the National Publicity Secretary of the APC, Lanre Issa Onilu, advised Nigerians to disregard latest comments in some quarters that are discrediting the electoral umpire in conducting free and fair elections come next month.
Elections since APC came to power, and you can be sure that all those elections were conducted without any interference from this government. In fact, if there's anything you want to credit this government for, one of the major ones is the fact that institutions are allowed to fulfill their mandates without anybody interfering.
The federal government has restated its commitment to fast-track socio-economic development through the provision of good roads that will connect all parts of the country. Minister of State for Power, Works and Housing, Mustafa Baba Shehuri, gave the assurance while inspecting work on the Numan-Cham Federal Road project.
Before the end of the month or early February, they can get their payment. And anyway, you know, it is a contract, and we are partners, you know, in business. I think they can sustain the ongoing, project before even the payment. They are capable of, they have the capacity to.
And talking security, troops of 112 Task Force Battalion conducting clearance operations in the general area of some villages of Mafa local government area of Borno State have killed 2 Boko Haram terrorists in an encounter that ensued on Saturday, 19 January 2018. The terrorists who had infiltrated the villages to unleash mayhem on the communities ran out of luck as the vigilant troops projected their clearance operation to the village and fiercely engaged the terrorists in combat, killing 2 of them. During the operation, the gallant troops rescued 2 women who had been held hostage by the terrorists and have since handed them over to officials of Mafa Internally Displaced Persons Camp. The troops also recovered 1 Prime 36 hand grenade, 2 Dane guns, 1 locally fabricated short barrel gun, 2 mobile phones, 1 AK-47 rifle magazine, 17 rounds of anti-aircraft gun ammunition, 27 rounds of 7.62 mm special ammunition, and 22 rounds of 7.62 mm NATO ammunition. Well, that's the news for now. Claire and Kingsley will be back shortly with the rest of the program.
Right, welcome back. If you've just tuned in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and this broadcast live here on the network service of the NTA. Time for business, and inflation continues its upward trajectory in last month of 2018. We now join Chimaobi Walter Naji for the rest of the story.
The Consumer Price Index CPI, which measures inflation, increased to 11.44% year-on-year in December 2018, compared to 11.28% in the preceding month. The 0.16 percentage points increase from November estimates resulted from increases recorded in all the divisions that determined the headline index. The National Bureau of Statistics, in its latest inflation estimates for the period under review, stated that core inflation was unchanged from 9.80% recorded in November. Food inflation was recorded at 13.56% in the month under review, compared to 13.30% in November. In addition, the urban inflation rate increased to 11.73% year-on-year in December from 11.61% in November, while rural index increased to 11.18% in December from 10.99% in the preceding month. Meanwhile, as at close of trade week on 18th January 2019, market capitalization increased to 541.99 billion naira from previous week's 540.56 billion naira, which shows a 0.26% increase in capitalization. Also, the USI for the week ending 18th January recorded an increase from 752.42 points to 754.40 points. With business news, I'm Chimaobi Walter Naji.
Thank you very much there, Chimaobi Walter Naji, for the business package. Newspaper review is next for us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Bayo Atoyobi is here. Bayo, was it a busy weekend for you?
Yes, it was a restful one. Thank you, Claire. Good morning. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, Bayo, good to see you. All right, Claire, let's begin with you. I'm sure you have some stories.
Let's start off with the Daily Trust. And a bold caption, Obasanjo attacks Buhari or Shibajo, INEC. And there's a rider to that. You are sick, get well soon, presidency replies. And that's the headline. Let's take you a little below the nameplates there. National Assembly, that's another big story, begins budget debate this week. It's also trending on some of the papers we have. Let's take a quick look at the trending stories at the bottom of that paper. And it says, ASU strike, ASU tells government to release 50 billion naira. You can get the details of that on page 6. And federal government releases 9.7 billion naira for foreign scholarships, also trending on page 3. And Dangote fertilizer plant to begin operations in April, page 17. That's where you can get that story.
And to the Nigerian pilot at page 9, you have a story, troops kill terrorists, recover arms, and rescue captives in clearance operation. Below that, President Muhammadu Buhari assures of populist projects as Governor Sani Bello promises total support. And youth groups introduce leadership anti-trafficking education in Kaduna. And now to the Daily Independent newspaper. Daily Independent newspaper at page 10 of Daily Independent newspaper. We have a very busy story, the very busy page there with headlines. 2019 polls. Lawyer seeks restraining order against military. Again on 2019, cleric warns against hate speech and turbulent campaigns. Oshibajo tasks South-South youths on inclusive development. And right below the photograph there on the page, it says, Akwa Ibom PDP alleges plot to arrest and frame up key members. And APC youth leader scores Buhari 65% in performance. And 2019 polls again, INEC distributes insensitive election materials. Usually the sensitive ones will be distributed on the eve of the election. So those are the headlines in the meantime from both the Nigerian Pilot and the Daily Independent. Pilot, let's listen to you before we go to other stories.
Right, let's start with the letter of former President Olusegun Obasanjo published, a 16-page letter, and it says points for concern and action. He alleges self-succession linked to an era of General Sani Abacha. He also is saying that presently they are recruiting, collating officers who are already awarding results. He says President Buhari, APC, and INEC are plotting to rig February 15 election. He describes the trader money as outright idiotic and launches a personal attack on Professor Yemi Osinbajo as a lawyer, as a vice president, and as a pastor. He says security is worse, and the trial of Chief Justice of Nigeria by the Code of Conduct Bureau is an intimidation of the judiciary. He used some uncomplimentary language, least expected of his status. However, a statement from the Senior Special Assistant of the President says the second publication against the President is the last push of desperate politicians who cannot handle the President's politically and are resorting to subterfuge. He recalls that since leaving office in 1979, as military head of state, the former President Olusegun Obasanjo has never let every succeeding leader in the country function freely, even including the ones he personally handpicked. He says the former president and his crew travelers will be taught a political lesson with a much bigger win in 2015 elections. He says, Obasanjo says...
2019 election
2019 election. Yes. Obasanjo, he says, is envious because President Buhari has more esteem than him. The letter is from a man described by the National Assembly as grandfather of corruption, serving to rescue his thriving establishment. He observed that he needs a good doctor and wishes him quick recovery. The PDP Presidential Campaign Organization also says the concern raised by the former president vindicated the PDP position about self-succession plan. Spokesman for the All Progressive Congress says the former president is being haunted by what he did during his 8 years reign as civilian administration. He said he should adjust to the imminent defeat staring them in the face. In a reaction, the Independent National Electoral Commission by the National Commissioner for Voter Education, Festus Okoye, says INEC will look at the statement and act accordingly. He says if there are actionable or credible issues raised, they will be taken care of. He assured that INEC has courage and the presence of mind to conduct a good election for the Nigerian people. Meanwhile, the Daily Trust made a recall and said that former President Goodluck Jonathan had actually acknowledged that former President Obasanjo met him. He said, yet he wrote 5 letters to President Goodluck Jonathan, and one, he said, Jonathan was the most dangerous leadership since Abacha. There is this recurring decimal about Abacha seemingly haunting. The former president recalled that Obasanjo's letter was self-serving, hypocritical, malicious, indecent, and in fact disrespectful. Element of that letter said, Jonathan is actively dividing the country along north-south, Christian-Muslim, seems believing that that could help his cause. He then said Jonathan is training snipers and other armed personnel secretly in clandestine acquiring weapons for political purpose.
All right, Bayo, I'm sure you know that that letter is a detailed one, as you indicated. It's the latest.
The point to make here is that it's not the first time. It has been reoccurring, and there's need to draw attention to statesmanly conduct by all our former heads of state and presidents.
All right.
Well,
let's get on with other papers. Well, Kingsley, I don't know if you have.
Still from the Daily Independent, that's page 37, far inside the paper. And it says, Daily Independent, page 37, Urobo, we vote massively for Okowa, says Okumagba. And Rivers Cleric predicts Buhari's defeat in February 16 poll. And Blind Cleric wants electorate. APC grooming another Saraki in Senate with Amusu. Okorocha says Ajibulu. Presidential election, vote for my husband for Nigeria's greatness, says Atiku's wife. Details of the story can be found inside the paper.
Okay, let me quickly take the New Telegraph. It's also an insider paper report on page 7. Atiku's U.S. trip, a scam on Nigeria, Buhari's campaign. And just beneath that, there's also a rider. PDP to Buhari, your fixation, and Atiku's U.S. visit, defeatism. And just below that, Buhari fit healthy to govern Nigeria for another 4 years. That's coming from Osinbajo, that's the vice president. And amnesty programs, of course, there's a story on that also on that page. But I have two human angle stories, Kingsley and Bayo. The first is on the front page of the Daily Trust. You can see it's a picture story. And what's particularly interesting about it, this is physically challenged persons, coming together, to pray for a peaceful conduct of the 2019 general elections. And that happened at Rigasa in Kaduna State yesterday. And I thought that was quite, thoughtful and, patriotic of them to do that. And that's what every one of us is supposed to be doing, praying for a peaceful conduct. But I know this one on page, same paper, it's on page 5. You quickly look at, it's a tug of war. Female soldiers with the Nigerian Defense Academy, NDA, and some members of the NDA Officers' Wives Association engaged in a tug-of-war contest at the 2019 Nigerian Defense Academy social activities in Kaduna. I was wondering who won that tug-of-war.
Well, they call it WASA, which is the activity for the military social activities. It's always to bring together families of the soldiers to interact. And the other instructive one is the physically challenged persons who are calling for peace. Particularly, it's very germane coming from Kaduna. Rigasa is one of the incubators areas where they have sometimes they've been crisis-ridden in Kaduna. And so for them to have called there together and draw attention to peace is very instructive. My life is under threat. This is an alarm raised by Dennis Akanya. Akanya is the man who wrote a petition against the Chief Justice of Nigeria. He says he is the executive secretary of the Anti-Corruption and Research-Based Data. He says since the time he wrote the petition, friends and families have been sent to him and they are just stressed. And they said, don't accept, you will go down 6 feet. And he says, those who are offering something to him are, in fact, those who are in the public domain challenging the petition that it does not have merit. He said, instead, they should encourage the CJN to defend himself as far as the case is concerned. The Nigerian police has said that adequate security is assured to the public before, during, and after the upcoming elections. It says measures have been put in place to identify, isolate, and neutralize possible security threats. This is the reaction from the first public relations officer, Mr. Frank Mbaka, who, in reaction to information on the social media that the Boko Haram says they have plans to attack locations, including Abuja, during or before the elections. It says the operational and the intelligence unit of the police have been mobilized, and members of the public are also enjoined to help provide any information about suspicious persons.
Okay, let's quickly take Bayo, the editorial for today. And that editorial is on dwindling dollar value of customs revenue. That's how it's couched. And just the first paragraph speaks of an seemingly impressive returns on import duty collection for 2018. And if you read down, of course, there are figures which, rose to 1.037 trillion in 2017 and peaked at 1.2 trillion in 2018.
Yes, the editorial is of the opinion that INEC has, the custom excise have done tremendously well, particularly in the last 3 years. The revenue they have recorded, particularly from 2017, was about 1.37 trillion, and by 2018, it's gone to about 1.2 trillion. However, they said they recorded some seizures, about 16,000 seizures in 3 years, and most of these are imported, smuggled items, which are coming through the borders of the country, which they say is very, very porous. Now, the editorial is saying that the dollar content of revenue accumulated by the Nigeria Board of Customs is very low. And this is because a lot of rice is imported, smuggled into the country. But because rice importation is restricted to about 10%, most of the revenue that ought to have accrued by way of dollar is going to the pocket of officers. And therefore, something has to be done to shore up the revenue content, particularly by way of dollars, of the Nigeria Custom and Excise. And therefore, they are saying that the federal government should track from its own record that about 3 million metric tons of rice were imported. That amount would improve the dollar content of the revenue that custom will realize. But however, if they plug all the avenues for smuggling, then there is a tendency that money frittered away into the pockets will be stopped.
All right, Bayo, thanks a lot. Now, the downside of that, of course, is that if you are still importing rice, what does that then do to the push for self-sufficiency in rice production?
Well, there are two sides to it. Yeah. We are producing rice in quantum. It has reduced importation to about 5%. That is to say that the locally produced rice is not sufficient for what we consume, and therefore they need 5% importation to supplement so that we don't have a shortfall. However, if the ascendancy increases, then very soon it is hoped that we won't even need to import rice at all.
Bayo, I'd like to thank you for being around.
Thank you.
And see you again tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing arms proliferation and next month's general elections.
Hate speech is not a joke.
Proliferation ahead of the 2019 elections, and our correspondent Victor Azo has put together this background report.
The proliferation of firearms is one of the major security challenges Nigeria is grappling with, and this has raised more concerns as the general elections draw near. Observers are of the view that most of the violence in Nigeria is exacerbated by the access to these arms in the hands of non-state actors who deploy them for communal and political crises and pose a threat to national security. Only recently, seizures were made by both the Nigerian customs and the police across the country, where large catch of arms and ammunition were intercepted. All these coming ahead of the 2019 general election raises concern of these arms being used by thugs and other political mercenaries who appear to be willing tools in the hands of desperate politicians who want to win at all costs. Despite the federal government's response of setting up the Presidential Committee on Proliferation of Small Arms and Light Weapons in 2013, questions still remain as to who are behind the importation of these illegal arms and what is exactly their mission. How effective is intelligence in checking this menace? What is the role of citizens in assisting the security agencies? Has there been adequate deterrence and punishment for those arrested? What is the effect of ongoing security challenges in the proliferation of arms during elections? How can the existing arms be mopped up? Guests are already in the studios to provide answers.
Thank you very much, Victor Azu, for that background, including, of course, the pertinent questions that you have raised. Joining us here in the Abuja studios to discuss this issue in greater detail, would like to welcome at this time the Deputy Inspector General of Police, who is in charge of operations. He is Habila Joshak. DIG Joshak, pleasure to have you with us again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good evening, viewers, and thank you for having me.
Also here with us in the studios is Dimka Victor David, is Comptroller of Enforcement at the Nigerian Customs. Dimka David, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. And the third guest with us is a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, is Chief Mike Ejiofor, is a former director of the Department of State Services and currently acting president of the Alumni Association of the Institute of Security Studies. Mike, pleasure to have you again on the program.
My pleasure. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, we also have here with us in the studio Air Commodore Darlington Abdullahi, retired, and his Secretary, Alumni Association, National Defense College. Thank you for joining us.
A great pleasure. Thank you very much.
And from our Sokoto studios, we have retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, Tambari Yabo. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, Kingsley.
All right, let's begin this conversation by first going to the DIJ in charge of operations. I mean, one of the latest reports had to do with the seizure of illicit arms, obviously, that were imported into the country or found their way into the country. How much of a problem do we have at the moment with regard to the plenitude of illicit small arms and light weapons?
Thank you so much. It is true that illicit or unlawful acquisition of firearms in this country has posed a problem, is a threat to safety and security of the public. More than 1 year ago, the Nigerian police and other security agencies and the military have collaborated together to do a mop-up by working on intelligence and cordoning off of areas that were suspected as places where these things are found or a window where they could be gotten. That has paid off because the mopping has resulted into the recovery of both the locally fabricated and the ones made that are imported. Quite a large number, beyond 10,000, have been recovered. And they are awaiting demolition because it has to go through a process. We have the international organizations that have collaborated with us, and we're just waiting for them. They've given us their words that it will be demolished very, very soon. The counterpart funding from the Nigerian police have been made. The MAC is an international company that does the demolition of illegal firearms, and the Presidential Task Force on control of firearms also are part of this. And so it's paying off, and even though we still have much to do, but it has paid off.
We will get to find out. We're happy that we have assembled here all security experts. And gentlemen, there seemed to be a kind of agreement among, from all that we have heard and read, that, arms and light weapons, there is a proliferation of arms and light weapons. But the question in line with Kingsley's question is the country on edge? Are we in a precarious situation? Let me again take the controller enforcement at the Nigerian Customs.
Thank you very much. Yeah. The issue of proliferation of arms is a very big concern to everybody, not the government alone, not customs alone, but to all security agencies in the country. We have seen that because of so many reasons, there's this buildup of arms, particularly in separatist agitations, vices like kidnapping, Boko Haram, insurgency, which has given a lot of rise of demand to the influx of these arms into the country. Today, we have tried to synergize more than ever before to ensure that there's collaboration.
Can you give us an insight? Can we have a picture of, the magnitude of this threat, especially, as election approaches next month? From the data you have, the interceptions you've made, the seizures you've made,
Between 2017 till date, Nigeria Customs Service seized 530,222 different calibers of ammunitions, and also seized 2,671 arms, largely of pump action. This did not come easy, but as a result of the collaboration we've been having with the
what routes? What routes?
Most times you find them coming in through the ports. But because of the collaboration between customs, the Interpol, the police, the DSS, particularly the Interpol, these things are nipped in the bud. That is why you find that most of them are arrested right in the ports. Some trickle in through the border stations, but customs have activated the way these things could be tackled. We have the enforcement stations in the different commands of the customs formations at the border stations. We also have the Customs Federal Operations Unit that serves as a backup to what the border commands are doing, and also the Controller General's strike force. So if one escapes the other, the second person might pick it or the third. So it's very, very difficult for them to come in now.
But they are coming in.
Yes, well, don't forget that whether we like it or not, we have borders that are porous because of the landmass. Yeah, don't also forget that we have the activities of Boko Haram that forces themselves in. So these things are coming in, but where they are within the reach of the customs, we get them arrested. And that's what we've been doing.
Comptroller Dimka David, I would like you to run the numbers one more time for the benefit of our viewers, and also to properly contextualize the extent of the challenge that the country faces with regard to the influx of small arms and light weapons. You said between 2017 and date, the customs have intercepted ammunition. Yes. What are the numbers? And then for the arms?
530,223.
All right, and then the small arms and light weapons, mostly pump action?
2,671.
All right, thank you very much. This is from 2017 to date. Now, I'm not quite sure what date it was now. There's a lot of media attention devoted to the seizure of some 661 pump action rifles at the ports. Do those pump action rifles include the ones that you have just identified? Exactly. All right, thank you very much. Let's pause here in the meantime. I'm bringing now Air Commodore Darlington Abdullahi. Right, now we have, you are nodding and smiling. 2,600 pump action rifles and over 500,000 ammunition. Even for a country at war, wouldn't that be scary?
Definitely quite scary. But it's instructive to note that prior to all this, it was reported that there were, it's been on for about maybe 5 years now, that about 8 million, illegal arms are, moving freely within the West African zone, and about 70% of them are within the Nigerian territory. And if you now bring in all this, add this to it, then you know that there's a major problem on our hands. This is more so that, proven by the fact that we're having increased number of unidentified gunmen, attacking people here and there. Most of the reports we get is apart from the known ones, the Boko Haram, the herdsmen, and so on, there's an increase in the number of attacks by unidentified gunmen. Although many of them still eventually get picked up, because I know that the police has been working. I mean, some of the incidences that were reported, some of them were eventually picked up. But the issue of prevention is key to all this. You know, how do we now prevent the use of these weapons and probably begin to collect them, get them back, I mean, retrieve them from those holding them at the moment. So there is a problem because of the increased number of weapons beyond what has been reported, because there were a lot already in existence.
Okay, let's bring in, of course, the former director of the Department of State Services, Mr. Mike Ejiofor. Mr. Mike Ejiofor, would like you also to share your own perspective, you know, to the burden at hand. Again, is the country on edge?
Yeah, the country is very much on edge. Civil society organizations have been raising concerns. In fact, I think it was 2 weeks ago that the Director General of National Task Force on Arms, that is yet to be approved by the National Assembly, raised the alarm that politicians are approaching them for supply of arms. So if you look at it, that we're going to election, and most of these crises, especially with light arms, are activity generated by politicians. The politicians who believe that it's a do-or-die affair. It raises a lot of concern. A lot of concern because the figures we are even mentioning here are the ones we think are on record. The ones in circulation that are not registered are more. And like the Air Commodore said, 70% of the illegal arms in circulation in West Africa is in Nigeria. And it gives cause for worry. People who should be looking at the sources of all these arms and how we can control them. Because if we allow this unchecked to go into the election, we are going to have a lot of violence, which has also started manifesting. You recall what happened in a rally in Lagos, where guns were freely used and machetes were used. So it becomes a real cause for concern.
Against that background, sorry to interject, against that background, can we still claim not to know the peddlers, you know, of these arms proliferation?
Well, it's not that the security agencies don't know the peddlers. But the one that comes before them is one they can intercept. So it requires a collective effort of everybody in volunteering information, because these people, these gun runners, the peddlers, some of them are known, some of them are licensed, and they still give arms to people who are not authorized. Otherwise, if they are licensed, we don't have a problem. So I think there should be a way of monitoring the licensed arm dealers, who and who bought arms from them. When their arms come in, they should be able to check what they have got. Don't also forget that these people also get their illegal arms, apart from the one that comes naturally from the borders. And like the custom officer said, we have a lot of porous borders, arms coming in from different places. So it's a real cause for worry as we approach the election.
All right, Mike Ejiofor, thank you very much. Let's go over to our Sokoto Network Center, where we earlier introduced retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, Tambari Yabo. Retired AIJ, you've listened to the other guests on the program. Give us your own sense of what to make of the proliferation of illicit arms and light weapons and the impact that has on security management.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. I will start by saying that it is true to say that most of these illicit arms come through the seaports. However, we must not forget the fact that all the countries surrounding Nigeria, there are lots of areas where you have crisis, problem areas. Like in Mali, you have a lot of crisis there, and arms are freely moving. Like in Libya, there are lots and lots of problems there, and arms are freely moving. If you go to Central African Republic, it is the same story. So you see that, especially to the north, where you have land border between northwest and northeast of Nigeria, there are countries that are really passing through a lot of crisis, and small arms find their way. Sometimes even on camels, they cross the forest borders and they go unnoticed by the security agencies. So this is greatly helping to heighten the activities of criminals and armed robbers, kidnappers, and even insurgents, because sometimes they do get their supplies from these problem areas. To add to what is, the recoveries that are being made through the seaports. Now, the impact, there is definitely a big impact. It is touching the lives of so many Nigerians. You find that so many highways have become very vulnerable. You find that even farmers in some places in the northeast and even northwest, people cannot freely go to their farms to cultivate and for food. So that is touching seriously, not just on the people, on the peasants themselves who are producing the foodstuffs. And if they don't produce, we who are living in the cities, we are directly involved, because we are directly touched. The prices of food will go high, and so on and so forth. So this is the impact it is making on the country. You find that even to travel from one state to the other, one is in a precarious situation. One begins to entertain some fear. We have to put security agencies on our highways and so on and so forth. The other day I was traveling with an alien, and we were passing the soldiers from place to place, and he kept asking me, knowing fully well that I was once a police officer. I said, well, those are the things that we have to live with now because of the impact of our neighbors. What is happening there is directly touching us. So these are also, if you match up with what the recoveries that are being made from the seaports, the border areas too, there are problems. So we really have a problem. There's a precarious situation that we must try to put heads together, all the security agencies, and indeed even the public should come together to find a solution to. We shouldn't leave it to the government. The government, the public, the security agencies, everybody has a role to play in trying to find a solution to this problem that is alien to us. In the 70s, who knows about all these things? Now they are coming, the world is getting more sophisticated. While we, the security agencies, are doing our very best to find solutions, don't forget that the criminals too are also using technology. They are trying to beat the security agencies so that they can have a field day. Just like it is happening now. So we have to come together, all of us, to find a solution to halt this menace. Thank you.
Retired Assistant Inspector General of Police from Sokoto State. But gentlemen, again, just seeing up from what he has just said, is what we're seeing now, is it an emergent phenomenon that is characterizing, our electioneering period? And I ask this because, like he said, comparison is usually made, between past elections and what we're seeing today. So is this a trend that is beginning to characterize our elections? And, why is that? Let me again start with DIG.
Yes, proliferation of these arms and getting them into the wrong hands does not start today. And, of course, politicians would want to have full protection, and in doing that, some of them go out of their ways, trying to ensure that they get these things by all means. That is very true. But like I said, we've had some elections in recent past that are standing alone. You would see that even at the point where we thought that these people would want to be very funny, we've been able to ensure that most of the election did not have crisis, did not have issues of marauding firearm bearers that had invaded a polling unit or a polling booth or a rally and shoot at sight or shot at sight. In that case, some of the strategies that we put on ground is paying off, because there's a big synergy between the security agencies. The customs, you will agree with me, that they put in an eagle eye. What I should think now is that members of the public should be able to speak out. It is not possible for one to own arms in a community, in a small cycle, in an environment, and yet nobody knows. People should be able to speak out, because this is why we've been able to mop quite a large number. We're depending on the cooperation of members of the public. We're depending on the fact that members of the public should have that courage, should have that ability to work with us, to believe in us, and to trust us, so that we can mop quite a number. The issue of Lagos that you saw, they attempted to use firearms, and they all got into trouble. They've all been picked. And in the few weeks that had passed, the Inspector General of Police and his officers and men had done some trade analysis, and we knew that that group that attempted to use force on that rally day got into trouble. They've been rounded up. And if we continue to do that, and the cooperation of members of the public, because of course, when they brought that in and with a view to use it, the members of the public gave intelligence.
Why is it that it gets worse when election approaches? That's my question. Is it that politicians...
Yeah, I've said this. You know, a lot of people would want to be very, very safe and very, very free. In this country, I think there are a lot of people who would want, you know, to source for personal security outside the conventional approved security, which is the security that have been made to police the country. And this kind of people want to go out of their way. They want to harm. They want to get to power by all means. They also want to do away with their opponents. And this overzealousness is responsible for people going to source for those with arms and those that can operate them. We're aware of that, and that's why, like I said, members of the public, there's just no way a neighbor will walk in with something like a rifle or a pistol, and that for some time the neighborhood wouldn't know. And that's why we are sensitizing the members of the public to build confidence in the security agencies and quickly alert us. By so doing, we will prevent them from using those illegal acquired arms.
All right, GRG, Nabila Joshak, thank you very much. Let's bring in again Chief Mike Ejiofor. While we're still trying to sketch the outlines of the connection between arms proliferation and elections, and in particular the 2019 elections, can we have some profiling of what happens, usually with politicians, some politicians? It is often alleged that a politician who is worth his salt would have his own boys, and these are usually roughnecks who can take the laws into their own hands, do all kinds of things. And of course, the better armed they are, the more armed they are, the better prepared they are to protect their principal. And some have described this as a case of mutually assured destruction. So that, you know, you, Mike, you know, you have your boys. Kingsley will also have his boys. And if Claire is also running for office, she also has her boys. And before you know it, we're all over the place. Has it not been possible over time to profile these elements and then go after them rather than just sitting back and waiting for the public to squeal on them?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just like the DIG said, some of these arms are acquired as a counterbalance. What do I mean? Some of these are politicians, have policemen, not really policemen, but policemen who act as thugs.
Sorry, you mean personally sourced policemen?
Yes. Security guards.
Security guards.
No, I mean policemen. So I think it's time now, the new leadership of the police, thank God the DIG is here, should look at, reappraise the policemen they send out. Because I get worried. I've carried arms. I know the danger of carrying arms. You see politicians coming to functions, coming to being guarded by policemen, and they start shooting into the air. And when you do this, you intimidate the people. So your opponent, who also has no protection, will go out to go and look for his own protection by arming illegally other people. If they come with the police, we are here to wait for them. So police should be discouraged from shooting at functions in public places because they are not supposed to do that. I think the new leadership of the police should look at that. And not only that, you see, when you have a stronghold for the politicians, because we are talking of profiling now, that is where intelligence comes in. And the police should also, with the SSS, collaborate and work out how these people, known people, of course, should be handled, because most of them are identified, but they are above the law. They are above the law. Nobody can touch them. And so they are controlled by forces, too, in government. So we should not be looking at who are they. We should look at who are their sponsors, who are their godfathers, before we start getting solutions to this problem. As we go into election, it's going to be, unfortunately, I am not a pessimist, but I see this election becoming very, very violent. Because America has also raised issues, raised concern. Civil society organizations have. In fact, the ex-Niger Delta militants have also come out to say that politicians are arming people. So it is the responsibility of the politicians. The government should address the politicians to know that this country belongs to all of us and they should not destroy the country.
I'm staying with you, Mr. Jofo, and you know, the DIG mentioned something about sourcing of personal security, guards and all that. And also Kingsley talked about the issue, the principle of MAD, that's mutually assured destruction. Now, subtle implementation of this principle, how does it, what's the nexus of this, and our gun laws? What does our gun law say?
Well, you see, we have guns that are licensed. Guns are naturally licensed in Nigeria for gaming. They are not for protection. The security agencies, the police is there to protect you. But what we do now is that people get guns, licensed guns, and use them for protection because of failure of the system. But that, again, does not justify people arming themselves. But if you know that somebody is armed and you are armed, at times I go crazy, trying to suggest that we should even liberalize licensing of arms. Because if you know I'm armed, you can't come to me. But because people feel they are bound, they're above the law, they can go out against other people, everybody is scared. We're not talking only about politicians. We are talking of small and light weapons. I've not seen any recovery of AK-47 that's being used freely by Boko Haram and kidnappers. The terrorists, who they call herdsmen, they use AK-47 freely. We're not talking about that. No record is kept about that. So we are in very serious peril as time goes on.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. Let's go very quickly to Sokoto and bring in again retired AIG Tambari Yabo. Retired AIG, I would like you to also speak to this point, particularly in connection with the elections, that you have politicians who have their boys, and these boys, are armed. So what has been the challenge with profiling these elements and going after them on the one hand? That's the first question. Second question would be, as Mike was saying, we have seen an increasing abuse of the licensing process for firearms. So a person goes to the licensing authority, in this case the police, I believe, they say, I have a Dane gun, which is for gaming. I'm a hunter. So the police gives me a license, but in the meantime, I have a pump action or have an AK-47 or some other deadly weapon. So what has occurred that the licensing regime itself is ineffective or has been abused?
Thank you very much, Kinsley. Let me first start with the first issue you raised about the area, so-called area boys that are being trained by the different political parties. It is true that each party has its own group of this type of people, and we have been profiling them, and to a very large extent, I know that we have been arresting some of them, especially on the eve of the elections. If we know you to be a notorious area boy who goes about carrying these illicit arms, we arrest you and take you to court for illegal possession of those firearms, even if they are not firearms, even if they are, swords, sticks, and so on and so forth. All the weapons that have been classified as offensive weapons under the Public Order Act, although it's no more working, but there are some weapons that have been classified as offensive weapons, and anybody who is found with such weapons can be arrested and he can be prosecuted. Now, we also try to bring the politicians themselves, talk to them, show them that this practice of, bringing and training and encouraging these boys, area boys, they should stop it, because we have not seen their own children, their blood children getting involved into this type of things. We normally speak to them like that, and those are some of the ways we use to, but Kinsley, because of maybe poverty, every day we do our very best to ensure that we bring this into its barest minimum. However, you see some of them, pockets of them, getting involved in this type of things. That is to say that I asked myself, why? The only reason I could find is that maybe because of poverty, because of want, because of squalor, and so on and so forth. That's because otherwise, why are we not seeing the children of the house inside this this problem? So the politicians should really have a rethink on a very serious note, and try not to encourage the children of the poor into these things, because whoever is well-to-do, whoever has something doing, will not be an area boy. Certainly, it is people who are deadly poor and who cannot make ends meet. Then, on the second question of the second issue you raised about, Kinsley, please remind me about the second issue.
Yeah, I was talking about the abuse of the licensing regime for firearms, that a potential licensee would approach the licensing authority to say, for instance, I want to license a Dane gun, purpose gaming. In the meantime, he gets the license, and what he has in his possession is probably an AK-47 or a pump action or some other higher caliber weapon.
They give you. Like the other gentleman has said, the license from the very beginning is not for protection. It's not for you to bring out the rifle when a thief visits you in the night and then begin to shoot him. No, it is for gaming purposes. And in any case, there are two types of these licenses. Some of these, people don't know, some of these arms, there are some of them that are completely prohibited. You cannot even give license. For pistols, for example, the Commissioner of Police or even the IGP, the law says don't give license for pistols. Those are prohibited firearms. And when you abuse it and give to people like that, then from there you are beginning to have your problems. Also, the Dane guns, sometimes in the old days, it is usually the native authorities that, give such license. But with time, when we found that even the Dane guns are being used to waylay people on the highway and rob them of their valuables, we try to once we see them, sometimes we cease. we seize, and even if we don't charge you because the law has no provision for that, at least we seize away the firearms from you so that you don't use it again tomorrow, or somebody does not take it from you and use it on another person. So this is how you find the abuses, because sometimes for you to be given a license, they must have tested you. A medical doctor must have tested you. You must be in your full, all your 5 senses must be working correctly. But where somebody, because he has money or he has an influence and so on and so forth, you come to the commissioner of police, for instance, and maybe sometimes they threaten himself. I have been referred by so person, please, so and so. You have not done the right thing because you have not sent that person to a medical doctor to really examine him and say, yes, all his 5 faculties are working correctly. Otherwise, you will give to the wrong hand. Even people with very high temperaments are not supposed to have license. People that are known to be temperamental, they are not supposed to have license. Things like that are all thrown to the dogs. That is why you find all these abuses, and you find the arms falling into the wrong hands. We have to be, if we have to ensure a neat process, then we must adhere to the provisions of the law as to who is supposed to get a license and who is not supposed to get a license. Thank you, Kinsley.
We will still pursue this issue of license. Of course, the DIG is here, will tell us how enforcement is done. But let me bring in Comptroller Dimka Victor David. Now, you told us about the interceptions you make. When you do intercept and, of course, carry out your seizures, what next?
Preliminary investigation is carried out and is eventually handed over to the DSS, Department of Security Services, for further interrogation.
So far, these investigations, are they ongoing? Are they never-ending investigations? What have been the outcome of your investigations? Have you been able to track down the, peddlers, identify them, prosecute them? I mean...
Like the ones that were the 660 that were arrested last year in the ports, almost everybody has been arrested, and the service has linked up to with the country of origin where these things came from. And so it is not, you don't rush investigations on imports of illicit arms because you want to nip it in the bud. You get everybody concerned so that you kill it completely. Killing completely is getting everybody that is involved so that there won't be a reoccurrence of that any longer. We have a lot of them that are undergoing interrogations.
How long does it have a time frame? How long does it take to conclude a particular investigation?
There's no time frame, because I might be looking for one of the suspects. He might be out of the country. You link up with the Interpol, they get him. The time it takes to get him might be long. So you continue until you get to the end of it. There's no time frame at all.
All right, Comptroller David, you've just raised another important dimension to this conversation, which we're going to come to regardless, which has to do with the country of origin. It does appear some persons would say that because you have the frequent seizures at the ports, this consignment must be coming from somewhere. Which countries are the most frequent sources of these illicit consignment?
I will not want to be straight by saying they are coming from one country or the other, because arms has a lot of money attached to it. You have countries producing arms, and they need to sell their arms. And if they need to sell their arms, that means they have to have their links all over the country or all over the world. And so you find out that most times you get them coming from China, some from Turkey. And I know the Nigerian government and even customs have been linking up with embassies, telling them about the threats that these things are being posed. Most times, I mean, you find out that these are individuals having pockets of their cohorts here and there, bringing in these things to sell. Don't forget, too, that it is not about just protection. The people that are producing these things want to sell what they have produced. And most times, too, they come in with the expertise and technology. If they manage to come in, they get a small place where these things will be reproduced. And so, for this reason, almost every country is involved, depending on how much you check the imports, the exports leaving your country to another country.
Comptroller David, let's pause here in the meantime. I'm bringing now Air Commodore Darlington Abdullahi. I'd like you to take this from the perspective of strategic security architecture. Look, it does appear to a lay person that the country is openly vulnerable to traffickers, to gun runners from all over the world. And when we make interception from time to time, that's good news. But as we also have indicated, where you have 70% of illicit arms in the West African sub-region being located in Nigeria, all of that should pose a great deal of threat to our security architecture. What should be our national response to this? First, to those persons who are the gun runners, the local collaborators who are here, to the countries of origin of all of this, and indeed, to the international bodies that have any connection to do with illicit and light weapons, plus, of course, the associated crimes, including human trafficking, kidnapping, and more importantly, drugs.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been reported that there is a dark web, I'm talking about internet now, through which people acquire illegal arms. I mean, they source weapons through the internet, the dark web. Also, there are about 640 million weapons globally, illegal weapons globally circulating. I have the reports on that. This, coupled with porous borders. When I say porous borders, these borders have remained porous for decades. We've been talking about porous borders for years, and they have so remained. Although efforts have been made with the immigration and also to tackle these the problems of this illegal movement around the borders, but this has remained a major problem. And until we begin to address the issue of porous borders, it will be difficult for us to address the issue of the small arms, proliferation of small arms and light weapons. This is more so that even at the ports, yes, a lot of seizures are being made. That is acceptable, but that we cannot rule out the fact that a lot more could still be coming in unnoticed, even through the same ports and even air, through the air transportation as well. But the issue of porous borders has to be seriously addressed. I know that in some countries, when, for instance, India had a major problem with neighboring countries and the issue of porous borders, what they did was to put in place special border security forces, to work with the immigration to be able to control the movement of illegal weapons, into the country. No, that is an aspect, that could be done. Then, as for the sources of these weapons, it's difficult to tackle. Well, from the imports that come in and the documentation and all that, I think the custom and the DSS should be able to give us information and trace this. After all, when this lady, the lady that was in NAFDAC, the late
Dora Akunle.
Dora Akunle, really, yes, thank you, was on duty. She used to even visit the companies after discovering this, go to the countries and raise the issues about their illegal imports, exports into our own country and all that. And I think they were able to achieve a lot of results. So we are, that's a situation in which we have to take the battle to the countries concerned. I mean, diplomatic issues.
Fine. Thank you, Commodore Abdullahi. Of course, when we talk about arms proliferation, porous borders, we can understand. I mean, smugglers, make use of those porous borders. But again, just before we go and break, Mike Ejiofor, the ports is a very secured area. And for people to, bring in these arms illegally through the ports shows how daring they can be. Do you suspect, or might we suspect, any form of complicity?
Of course. You see, in every group, you have the Judases. So it's not as if the entire management or custom itself or any of the agencies at the port will be held strictly liable. There are some people who connive with this. You remember the issue of 600 and something arms that were seized. They were not seized at the port. They had left the port. So they are working in concert with some people. And I think some custom people were involved too. They were arrested and interrogated. So the issue of ports, you still have illegal entry of arms coming in from the ports. That cannot be, there's no way it can be ruled out. It's an established fact. In addition to our porous borders, which it's very, very difficult to man because of our landmass and our neighboring countries. They want to sell their arms. Why is Boko Haram still thriving and still unleashing terror on the people? It's just because of this illicit arms. Some people claim they're coming from Libya. We are not having any border with Libya. And you see, it's an indictment on our part, on everybody's part. So we must wake up to our responsibility, cooperate with our security agencies, and also have some self-examination within the security agencies. Who are the moles? Who are the people being used? They must be identified and brought to book. That's the only way we can go ahead.
Yes, and I know that Comptroller David Victor, you want to, of course, respond here. What kind of intelligence are you getting with regards to, of course, your members who might be complicit, and of course, activities of peddlers?
We, apart from getting the anti-corruption unit to checkmate all the activities of customs officers all over the country, we have the Customs Intelligence Unit to continue to profile officers. What have you released? How many years have you been in the port? What are your activities? And they are doing this in collaboration with the SSS, also the police, so that we begin, those that we now know that are security risk or revenue risk are picked up, profiled, and dealt with immediately. Just like the former director of SSS said, the indictment is on everybody. If you are a policeman and you have an information about a custom officer that is not doing what is right and you keep it to yourself, the indictment should go to you. Today, we don't work at cross purposes where an agency wants to take the credit for doing another man's job. No. We work together, we synergize and ensure that things are done properly. And that is why it is increasingly becoming very difficult. Yes, as we've always agreed, that there might be moles. There are people that no matter what you do, they will try to circumvent the system.
All right, Comptroller David, thank you very much. Let's pause all the gentlemen here with us in the meantime and go on a short break. When we return, we'll take some of the tweets and then continue with the conversation.
Madam.
That's it. Those naira are enough.
Hi, dear. Helen, you got so much. You're going to have to spend.
Sorry, so let's take some of the tweets that have come in now. Mike Ayanko. The proliferation of firearms in the country is very disturbing. Now, it is more palpable with the general elections around the corner. These firearms are illegally procured by some politicians and handed over to their thugs for the purposes of rigging elections.
All right, and Daily Jack Solomon tweets, a better control of ammunition imports into the country may assist the combat of light weapons proliferation, as well as the comprehensive destruction of weapons from these armament efforts. The illicit weapons trade in Nigeria is increasingly transnational, and it requires regional and international cooperation and support to combat it. Our security operatives must ensure they keep in check the proliferation of light weapons if we must have a successful conduct of the 2019 general election.
Festus Akimboyewa, the huge number of arms and ammunition intercepted by our customs recently shows that government and security agencies are giving attention to the problem of the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. The sad thing, though, is that no one appears to have been punished to serve as a deterrent.
And Cecilia Okoroma tweets, massive arms proliferation shows desperation of some unscrupulous politicians who sponsor killings, agitations, they call insurgency.
And Ibrahim Tudu, now the modus operandi of security and intelligence services makes a layman wonder how those services deal with the numerous and endless firearms that have been seized from criminals. Every seizure is supposed to be a trove of information and revelation leading to sources, contacts, and sponsors.
And Law Alpha C says desperation and driving ambition to acquire political power by greedy politicians dotting the landscape is a major reason, intimidating the available ill-equipped security agencies so as to snatch ballot boxes on election day is not done with bare hands, he says.
Now, Daily Jack Solomon again. We all know that some politicians recruit thugs, buy arms and vehicles for them to do the dirty job of harassing, maiming, and killing political opponents, in addition to snatching ballot boxes on election day. Please, can your guests tell Nigerians what they are doing to checkmate these politicians?
All right, that will be in a moment. But let's take this one again from Sunny Michael or Markoji, and he tweets, the proliferation of firearms with 2019 general election around the corner calls for concern and is an indication of how vulnerable Nigeria has become. I'd like to thank you, as always, all of you for tweeting. Please keep them coming. Kingsley?
Let's bring it again, Air Commodore Darlington Abdullahi. There's an issue that I would like us to address. We keep hearing our borders are porous, borders are porous. I've been hearing that for several decades. How sustainable is that alibi? Now, against the background that we have a number of think tanks around the country. The NIPS is there, the Defense College is there, and they did several other institutes where new measures can be thought out, where new measures can be incubated. We see the American government is suffering a partial shutdown now because a president says, listen, I'm going to build a wall, in the southern part of the country against illegal immigrants. That's a potential solution. It has its own challenges. But are we just resigned to the fact that our borders are porous, and see the havoc Boko Haram has been committing in the past 10 years on account of the fact that we appear to have thrown up our arms? Nothing can be done?
Well, quite a lot can be done. But the fact is that at those institutions that you mentioned, the National Defense College, NIPS, and others, a lot of research, conducted regularly on annual basis. Even each participant in both institutions, they all conduct individual research and group on all these issues. And some of the things that I just mentioned are some of the results of the research, the outcome of some of those, is that we know that the borders are porous, and it's been there for quite some time, like I said. But the issue is they can't go beyond that. All they know is they have to make recommendations to government, and the political will now to deal with such issues, and that's the thing. Take, for instance, like I mentioned earlier, the issue of special border security forces. That calls for a bit of restructuring, of the armed forces, the police and other security agencies, the DSS inclusive, that will enable them give more support to the immigration. And of course, the issue of manpower, adequacy of the manpower is also there. I mean, when we begin to think of how to deal with about over 1,493 illegal entry points identified, you know, I mean, with the manpower that we have, then it's a major issue. Good enough, like I heard the acting Inspector General of Police mentioned that about 30,000 policemen will be recruited on an annual basis, if I'm right. Yes, I heard that a few days ago. And I believe that, yes, we need to boost the strength of the armed forces and all the security agencies because of the problems we have at hand. We have lost a situation whereby development can freely take place. So, but to bring back, to get us back to that level, we need to deal with the security situations to create a conducive atmosphere for development today. So we shouldn't shy away from investing in security to enable us address some of those identified challenges that we have always talked about.
Okay, let's bring in the DIG, Habila, now. We've heard that 70% of, you know, the over between 500 and 800 million weapons circulating is domiciled in our country. Now, the breakdown of that, according to those who have done the mathematics, is that every 2 Nigerian, you know, is carrying a gun. What does that tell us about the efficiency of our security agencies? Are they doing enough? And I'd also like you to take it along with you, the issue of personal sourcing of police for security by politicians and, of course, the misuse of gun licenses.
Thank you. The proliferation of arms, as you've seen, and its potential danger it poses in this country. You are aware that most of the security agencies, in collaboration with the military, have stepped up processes of mopping them up. We also have the Presidential Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons that are operating and also collaborating with the security agencies. Like you saw, the Nigerian police that had gone into mopping up of these arms in the recent past. You've seen, we've been here discussing it, and you saw that a lot of people wanted this to be made permanent. I want to say that we shouldn't be afraid that these arms that are in the hands of these individuals will constitute, of course it will, but it's not going to prevent us from exercising our franchise. As I speak to you, the new acting Inspector General of Police, IGP Abubakar Adamu Mohammed, is with the commissioners, his commissioners of police, the AIGs, and every other person that is important in the Nigerian police that drive processes of ensuring peace are right at the headquarters. I'm sure the NTA will bring that story to tackle some of these problems. But I can let you know that members of the public that we've been meeting and sensitizing, you are aware we've had what we call the Security Summit, that a lot of this have been discussed. You are also aware that the federal government have a policy of bring in your arms and surrender them for a ransom. A lot of states have done that, but the federal government is driving that. There's nobody, no police officer granting any license. Nobody is granting license for the importation of firearms now. The Firearm Act is not operating. There is no security agencies and the Nigerian police or the military that is granting anybody permission to bring in arms. There's none. Rather, we're mopping. The federal government have opened a window that those of them that are in possession of their arms should bring them and some ransom be given. And that's why in some states recently, like Akwa Ibom, quite a large number of arms were turned on. It happened also in Bayelsa and other states. So there's no one now. The ones that were given for gaming, self-loading firearms for gaming, are usually given by the local government council of each of those areas. That also is not being given. In fact, the departed souls, those that have died and left their arms, is not transferable. Those arms must be returned to the armory, must be sent to the police. And so the window of getting an opportunity to own a gun is not there. And so the effort of the government is very, very clear. The message is very, very clear. And because of that, I am just assuring you that this process of mopping up arms will succeed beyond bounds if members of the public will speak out.
Yeah, DIG Joshua, I was just going to ask you that question again. How can a layman or a lay person identify, location of an illicit weapon? I mean, they'd say that these things may not be kept in the homes unless you see it. If it is buried somewhere, what are the telltale signs that you should look out for?
Okay. Anybody that owns arm would want to use it. And in an attempt to use it, you have to bring it out. When you bring it out, the neighbors, because it's not something to be hidden. Sometimes when neighbors, or sometimes when a household has come under an attack, if you have one, that person has the tendency of reaching out to that arm to be able to use. And so they'll fire up. There are even those who at night would want to demonstrate, to tell people, look, I have this. So keep off. They will come out and fire. There may be no presence of security. There may be no presence of government officials who would have reported. But the neighborhood, the community, the people around there will surely know that, in fact, most people who own arms, the neighbor, friends, and some other individuals know. But some are not ready to open up. Some would say, if I say this, maybe the police will come after me. And that's what I'm talking about, building of confidence. If we do that, I can assure you that a lot of this will be a thing of the past.
All right, GIG Habila, thank you very much. Very quickly, back again to our Sokoto Network Center, retired AIG Yabo. Retired AIG Yabo, tell us something. What is the level of frustration that prosecutors suffer when, after arraigning a suspect who's been usually a political thug or some other roughneck, who's been picked up on account of illegal possession and use of firearms, and the matter is in court, and suddenly you have an order from above or for some big shot, say, look, discontinue that case?
Well, Kingsley, sometimes even the prosecution witnesses themselves, they don't have the willingness to go to give evidence against such people for fear of reprisal attacks. Because mostly, if you go to give evidence, because by our development, we are a developing nation, so to speak, and therefore, if I am charged with any offense and you come to give evidence against me, even though while there is glaring evidence that such an offense has been committed, I will become your enemy. Simply put, I'm your enemy, and you can do many things to harm me. That's why you see most of our officers sometimes attacked them when they retire. They are going to the farms. They attack them. They do all sorts of things, and they terminate the man's life just for coming to give evidence. Even for not just even coming to give an evidence, becoming a prosecution witness in a matter. Sometimes even when you arrest, like somebody is a criminal, he wouldn't like to be arrested. He knows he's a criminal. He is illegally possessing a firearms, and on information, as a policeman, you go and pick him up. You will see, by our standards, developing nations, you are still his enemy, and anything can happen. But however, we normally dump the consequences, and we try to do our job no matter the outcome. So simply put, the reason is that people don't want to give evidence, evidence against suspects for fear of reprisal attacks. Thank you.
Assistant Inspector General of Police Tambere Yabo, we'd like to really appreciate you for your contributions this morning and to say thank you. Do have a pleasant day. And we're back here in the studio. Let me again go to Mike Ejiofor. Mike, thank you very much for joining us. But just in less than 30 seconds, what do you think, how do you think we can restrict gun use during the elections? In less than 30 seconds, if you may.
Well, I think there's an urgent need for government, along with security agencies, to convene a meeting of all the political parties to enlighten them on the dangers inherent in what they are doing, that they're endangering not only their life, but the lives of Nigerians.
Thank you, Mike Ejiofor, former Director, Department of State Services, and of course, he is the Security Assistant President, Alumni Association of Institute of Security Studies. Many thanks to you. Let me also appreciate Dimka Victor David, Comptroller Enforcement at the Nigeria Customs. And last but certainly not the least is Air Commodore Darlington Abdullahi, retired, Secretary, Alumni Association, National Defense College. Thank you very much for coming. DIG Habila, thank you very much, who represented the new IG here. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
And that's our conversation. Let's now look at developing stories from the foreign scene. Broadcast later today at 5:05, but that's on NT News 24 and of course online. I am Claire Delabo Abdurrazak. Have a good day.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Claire in thanking you for tuning in. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, we'll have a lovely day ahead of you.